Tene tatanda tangbo ngarange chinamba kangala ngadudeli jujudan.
First of all, I would like to wish all of you good morning. And so all of you have come here out of a sense of faith and delight and joy and devotion in the Dharma. And in particular, you've come here out of a sense of real excitement and joy and delight at this opportunity to hear these teachings on the Song of the View of Mahamudra by Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche. So I'd like to thank you all very much for that. And now when you listen to this Dharma today, please have a pure motivation to listen to it. Of course, you all already have this pure motivation. You have learned about the Dharma and you've attained faith through knowing about the Dharma. So you've understood the teachings and developed faith from that. But as is traditional, please also now try to implant that motivation of bodhicitta, the pure motivation, firmly as you listen to these teachings. Now, generally, in this song on the experiential song of this experiential song of the view of Mahamudra, there is a section on the view of Mahamudra, section on Mahamudra meditation, and then a section on the result of meditation. So it's taught in terms of these three parts. And of these three parts, the first of these is the view of meditation, and so the view of Mahamudra. And so for the view, first it begins with a description of the view that we arrive at through inference. So what we internalize and comprehend fully through studying and contemplating. And so this is coming to understand the nature of the Dharma nature, the nature of all phenomena, how it is. So this is that all phenomena are emptiness and that they are selfless. And we can call this many names. We can call it the essence of the Dharma expanse, the Dharma Dhatu. And we can come to really understand what this is through reasoning. And so this is just the nature of how the Dharma expanse is. And but when we look at the nature of all things, they are emptiness. But that emptiness is not just mere nothingness. It's not just blankness. It also has the nature of the essence of the luminous Buddha nature. This is the way things are, the way the Buddha nature is. And we can give it many names. We can call it the union of luminosity and emptiness. We can call it the union of the expanse and wisdom, or whatever we call it. When we think about this and we come to study it and fully comprehend it through studying and contemplation, then we develop certainty through inference. And when we have that certainty that we gain through inference, then is this actually directly seeing the nature of the mind as it is? Is it directly seeing the nature of the Dharma Dhatu as it is? Well, it's not. But it's close. And so if we have this certainty, then that can be the cause that will help us to quickly realize the actual nature of how it is. And so here in the Song of Mahamudra, it says in the lines 5 through 8, it reads, "It has been a long, long time since I lost Mahamudra. What am I, a little child who's so passionate to do? I sit by the side of my lover, everlasting bliss, on the verge of seeing what I've never seen before." And so here, this is talking about coming to really fully comprehend the view through logic and inference, and then developing some sort of an experience of it and developing real certainty of that. And so when we study, those of us who have begun practicing the Vajrayana path, what we first do is we come to establish the view through study and contemplation. We use inference. We come to really fully comprehend and internalize what the Dharma Dhatu, what the Dharma nature is like. And then on the basis of that, we meditate. But if we just meditate on that alone, then that is a rather long path. And so this is why in the words of the Buddha and in the treatises, it is often said that it takes 3 interminable eons for the Buddha to awaken to the state of Buddhahood. Whereas in the secret mantra Vajrayana tradition, we say it's not necessary to spend 3 interminable eons accumulating merit. You can we have the instructions for attaining the state of Vajradhara in 1 lifetime in 1 body. Now, when we look at these two, on the first glance, we look at them, it seems like, well, if it takes 3 interminable eons in order to attain the state of Buddhahood, it's not possible to do it. You can't possibly do it in 1 lifetime in 1 body. And then if you look at it together, if it takes only 1 lifetime and 1 body, then why bother spending 3 interminable eons? There's no point to that, no need to do any of that. It's just too long. And so, but actually, when we really look at it, there are reasons why these are said. And so in terms of the sutra, what the sutras talk about is first listening and contemplating and develop certainty. Then when you have that certainty, you meditate upon that, you practice the meditation on that. And this is a very long path. It takes 3 interminable eons of gathering the accumulation of merit. But in the secret mantra Vajrayana, we have the instructions on pointing out and recognizing the nature of mind. We have the instructions on Mahamudra and Dzogchen. And with these instructions, we can attain the state of Buddhahood in 1 lifetime and in 1 body. And so here in this song, when it is... when it first presents the view of the sutra, the view of coming to understand this through inference, and so developing real certainty through inference in this. And these are the lines that read from line 5, "It has been a long, long time since I lost Mahamudra. What am I, a little child who's so passionate to do? I sit by the side of my lover, everlasting bliss, on the verge of seeing what I have never seen." And then following this, then it teaches how we practice this through actually direct perception. And these are the lines starting from line 9, where it reads, "I assembled the provisions of pure renunciation and went to scout the mountainsides of the 3 solitudes." And so here, this is talking about the traditions that developed when the Dharma spread in Tibet, and the traditions of practicing the secret mantra Vajrayana, and pointing out and recognizing the nature of the mind, and developing the view of seeing Mahamudra and Dzogchen directly. And so this is talking about this process of looking this gradually. And so here this is from verses 9 and moving on from there. "I assembled the provisions of pure renunciation," and so forth. This is talking about developing the view through direct perception. So in terms of Mahamudra, there are the instructions that came from great Indian masters such as Saraha and Telopa. In the Dzogchen tradition, there are the instructions of Vimalamitra. And so these instructions, the methods they taught, were then spread in Tibet and are still present today without any weakening in any way. And so in accordance with the program for study that Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche set up, the first thing that we need to do is we need to develop renunciation. So I assembled the provisions of pure renunciation. We first need to develop a sense of renunciation from samsara. And then we need to enter the gate of the Dharma. And once we have done that, then as Trungpa Rinpoche established, then we can do Datun practices, where we do the practice of shamatha meditation. And so, as it says, I went to scout the mountainsides of the 3 solitudes. And so this is talking about sitting a Datun and doing having the solitude of the body, the speech, and the mind, and practicing shamatha meditation. It's talking about not following after our thoughts, learning not to follow after thoughts, not be distracted, and really developing the really strong samadhi of shamatha. And so this is like just basically what we do in Datuns. All remember that. And so these are all, these are the, then following that it says, then I was the spy of the instructions that speak the truth. And so there are these wonderful instructions that we then receive. As you all know, then after you do that, and then there's the pointing out instructions where you receive the transmission of the ordinary mind, the Tamilgi Shepa. And so we receive these through the instructions from the Buddhas and the great Mahasiddhas who spoke the truth, who truly gave these truly spoken instructions. And they talked about how we can look at the essence of the mind. And so this nature of the mind is something that is always present. It's always together with us. Now, when we talk about the nature of the mind, if we think about it in terms of the sutras, we use words like the nature of all phenomena, the Dharma expanse, the Dharma Dhatu, Buddha nature, and these are really vast words, huge words. But in the secret mantra Vajrayana, we just look to see what is our mind actually like. And when we look at it, we look at the mind, and the essence of the mind is empty. And yet, at the same time as the essence of the mind is empty, it has this clear wisdom aspect of it. So why is it that we say the mind is empty? What that means is when we look at the nature of the mind, when we look at the mind, we try to find something. We can't find anything there. There's no color that we can find. There's no shape that we can find. There's no essence that truly has some real, true, actual existence that we can find anywhere. We look and we cannot see anything that can be truly established anywhere in the mind. And so the essence of the mind is emptiness. And when we see that the nature of the mind is empty, then we are able to realize the nature of all phenomena. But this emptiness that is the nature of the mind, the nature of all phenomena, is not just blank nothingness. It's not absolute nothingness. It's not an inanimate material emptiness. Rather, there's the possibility for all of the appearances of samsara and nirvana to occur within it. But when we look at all of these appearances of samsara and nirvana, we can't find any single solid thing that is those things. There's no essence that we can find or see. And so this is the way things are. This is what was truly spoken, the instructions that speak the truth. And so they've given the instructions on it. And so then it says, I was the spy of the instructions that speak the truth. There is someone who lives within the innate self-secret city, a single sight of whom is enough. Could that be her, I wonder? And so when we look at this, it's the nature of the mind is something that's always present within us. It's always there, it's present, but we just have not seen it right now. And so it's like a single sight of this is enough, however. So if we just see it one time, that is all we need. Just seeing the Dharma expanse or the nature of the mind one time is enough. And if we see that, then we will be able to free ourselves from samsara and we will be able to attain the results of liberation and omniscience. And so then it says, could that be her, I wonder? And so this is like a symbolic way of saying, this is it. And this is showing how we gradually develop more and more certainty as we progress. So when we realize what this is like, when we realize Mahamudra, how does that actually help us dealing with all the confused appearances of samsara? Well, as it reads, starting in line number 14, birth, death, joys, and sorrows are the smile of a beauty. The appearance of samsara and nirvana as two is my beloved's hieroglyphs. Were I not deceived, I'd know it, but the demon who divides them has completely betrayed me. So, when we meditate upon the nature of the mind and the nature of phenomena, when we realize the nature of the mind and we have real certainty in this, then what is it that appears to us at that time? Well, what appears to us at that time are birth, death, joys, and sorrows. And so these are all the different appearances of the world. There are the appearances of the body. That's birth and death refer to the appearances experiences and the experiences of the body. And then joys and sorrows here refers to the appearances we have in our mind. In our mind, sometimes we are happy and delighted about things. Sometimes we are depressed and unhappy about things. And so these are the different experiences that we have, but they are the smile of a beauty. And so what it says when we say that they're a smile of the beauty, what that means is that within the nature of the mind, the Mahamudra, they occur within that. And if we realize that, then all of the appearances of birth, death, joys, and sorrows are all just experiences that we have within the nature of the mind. They're experiences within the Dharma expanse. They're experiences within emptiness. And because they are just experiences in this way, there is no way that they can cause us any harm. But if we do not realize the nature of the mind, the nature of Mahamudra or Dzogchen, then it seems to us as if these experiences of birth and death, of joy and sorrow, are something that naturally, truly exists and is really there. And because we have that appearance of them, it seems like they're. But actually, that is not how they are. If we realize the nature of how they actually are, they are not. It's not. So the appearance of samsara and nirvana is my beloved hieroglyphs. It's like the secret writing of my beloved. That's the appearance of the existence of samsara and the peace of nirvana. And these are just like the secret signs, the secret writing or hieroglyphs of Mahamudra. Actually, there is nothing that can be that truly exists within the nature of the mind. There's nothing that we can say that this is a permanent, real, truly existing thing. And so in this way, the birth, death, joys, and sorrows, and the appearance of samsara and nirvana, the dualistic appearances, they do not truly exist, but we haven't known this up to now. We've been deceived. Were I not deceived, I'd know that. So if right now I've been deceived, I don't know what's going on. I don't know that they don't really exist. And so, but if we were to know it, then we'd know the nature of the Dharma expanse, we'd know the nature of the mind, and then we'd be delighted and joyful about them. We'd practice them with great joy and delight. But up to now, that hasn't happened. Up to now, we have been wandering within samsara, experiencing all the sufferings of samsara. And why is that this has happened? It's because the demon who divides them has completely betrayed me. So the demon who divides me, this just means it's not knowing the nature of how they actually are. And by knowing this not nature, we've been fooled, we have been tricked. So up to now, we have not realized Mahamudra and the nature of the mind, and so because of that, we experience the birth, death, the joys, and the samsaras. We experience the kleshas, or the afflictions. We experience many different thoughts. And so this is how it has happened. But are these something that is really inherent within the nature of the mind? Is this something that actually changes the nature of the mind in any way? It's not. It doesn't change the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind is always the same. And so because of that, we are actually extremely fortunate. So up until now, we have been wandering in samsara, but now we have this ability to free ourselves from samsara. We have this ability to rid ourselves of the afflictions, the kleshas. We have this ability to free ourselves and from samsara and free ourselves from all the suffering of samsara. It's possible that we not be harmed by all of the joys and the sorrows. And the reason for this is that all the suffering, all the depression is not actually inherent within the nature of the mind. As it says, starting in line 18, from one perspective, it is only through the kindness of Mahamudra that we have a hope for liberation. If fixation on truth entailing effort could be established, there would be no way even the victors of 3 times could change it. And so, from one perspective means that up until this point, we have not realized it. But now, from the perspective of this point on, there is a way to free ourselves from from this. There is a way to recognize Mahamudra. We can recognize this, and we can free ourselves from suffering. We can bring ourselves to happiness. We can free ourselves from the afflictions, and we can attain the supreme and the ordinary cities through this. And so, and this is something that we can do. And the reason is that it's only through the kindness of Mahamudra that we have a hope for liberation. All we have to do is realize what is present within us. And if we know that, it's present within us, and if we know that, then we can be liberated. Now, and so it's because only through the kindness of Mahamudra, what we have inherently within us, that we can actually free ourselves from all the suffering. But then it continues, if fixation on truth entailing effort could be established. And so if actually all of our suffering, all of our pains, all of our unhappiness, all of our thoughts, all of our kleshas could actually be established, if all of our malice, all of our anger and hatred were actually true and could be really established as truly existing, then, if it all really truly existed, then there would be no way that even the Buddhas of 3 times could tame it. So the victors of 3 times, these are the Buddhas of the past, the Buddhas of the future, and the Buddhas of the present. None of them would be able to do anything, because if they could be established, they would be truly existent within us. If the afflictions, the kleshas, were naturally present within us, or if the suffering were actually naturally present within us, then there would be absolutely nothing that the Buddhas of the 3 times could do to help us get rid of them. But they are not actually established. They do not actually have true existence. And so if we realize the nature of the mind and the Mahamudra, then that's present within us all the time. And because that is always present within us, there is always this chance for liberation. And so up to now, we have not realized Mahamudra. And because we have not realized the Mahamudra, we do experience the birth, death, joys, and samsaras. And if this birth, death, joys, and sorrows, and all of these had true existence and really could be established as being something, then there would be no way that even the Buddhas could help us in any way. It continues from verse 22. But all appearances with aspects are an expression of the lover who has no aspects. So there's a chance for liberation. And here, aspects is it's a technical word. I couldn't find another one to put on. I'm sorry about that. It's like the images we see in the mind. So all the images of experiences that we have. So all the appearance with aspects. And to continue with what Rinpoche said, when we say all the appearances with aspects, what that means is there are various different experiences and feelings that we have. In the world, we experience feelings of pleasure. And when we experience pleasure, then we get attached to it. We cling to it. Then sometimes we experience feelings of suffering and pain. And then we have the sort of aversion and the hatred that arises out of that. And so there are all of these different appearances with the aspects that occur. There are the appearances that happen. But these are all an expression of the lover who has no aspects. So the lover who has no aspects is the nature of Mahamudra. This is the nature of the mind, the ordinary mind. They are just an expression of the nature of the mind. So actually, when we have a happy experience, we think of it as being, something being true, as something real, something good, and something wonderful, permanent that we want. But there's actually nothing like that. And similarly, with any pain or any suffering, there's nothing about it that is permanent, singular, or unchanging in any way. And so all of these just unfold and occur within the nature of the mind. They are an expression of the nature of the mind. That is just the way the mind is. It is how they happen. They are just an expression of it. And so all the different experiences and appearances we see are just an expression of the nature of the mind. And so because of that, there is a chance for liberation. And so when we think about it, we might wonder, can we actually get rid of our kleshas? And the answer is actually, yeah, we can, because they don't actually exist. They are empty of any essence, and yet they're naturally clear. And because of that, that's just the nature of the mind. It's present there. And so we are very fortunate. We have this great chance. And so all of us who are students of Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche, what is it that we do? Well, we receive the pointing out of the ordinary mind. We recognize it. We come to understand what the nature is. We understand what Mahamudra is. And so this is what it means to realize the view. And once we have realized the view, then we are able to eliminate all of our suffering. We will be naturally able to free ourselves. When we see our nature and we see that our problems and our kleshas do not naturally exist, then we're just naturally liberated from them. And then in terms of the qualities, the qualities are just naturally present within us when we see this. And so this is coming to understand the view. And so first the song teaches us the reasons why we have not realized it up to now, how it helps us to realize the view, and how we realize it by spying by being the spy of the instructions that speak the truth, by looking at this. And so all of this is establishing the ground. So the ground which is coming to understand the view coming to understand the view. When we talk about how it is that we really come to fully comprehend and internalize the view, in the great treatise by Maitreya called the Uttara Tantra Shastra, or the Supreme Continuum, that's taught through 9 different examples. And one of the easiest of these examples to understand is the example of gold. There is a big hunk of gold that's there. And someone's walking along and they lose their gold somehow. They lose their gold, it falls on the ground. And when it falls on the ground, no one knows it's there. It gets covered up by some litter and dirt and dust, and then gradually gets covered by filth and muck and all sorts of stuff. And it ends up just sinking further and further, getting covered up deeper and deeper. But when it's covered up like this, is there any change in the nature of the gold? No, it's still gold. The gold is still gold, and it can stay there for 100 years or thousands of years or however long it stays there. The nature of the gold doesn't change in any way. And so this is like an analogy for our Buddha nature, or for the Mahamudra, the ordinary mind, the way that it is. We all have this, whether we call it Buddha nature, Tamagi Shepa, or ordinary mind, we all have this. But because it's been covered up and hidden by all of the confused appearances of samsara, we don't realize that it's there. We don't know that it's there. And so it's just like the analogy of the gold under the ground. The nature of the gold does not change in any way. And in the same way, the nature of Mahamudra, the nature of the mind, does not change in any way, but it is hidden by all the thoughts, all of the afflictions, and all of the problems. It's temporarily hidden by all of those. So now, then the Supreme Continuum continues with the example and says, now, you've got this big hunk of gold buried under this pile of trash, and this poor guy comes along and he builds himself a shack, a really ramshackle, terrible little hut on top of this. He leads this poor, deprived existence with nothing, having a real difficult time supporting himself. He has absolutely nothing, and he's completely impoverished. Now, if you look at it and you sort of look at the situation objectively and analyze it, you'd say, is it actually necessary for this person to be impoverished? It's not. He's got this huge piece of gold right underneath his shack. If he just sort of pulled it out and extracted it, he'd be rich. But he doesn't know about it. And so since he doesn't know about it, he doesn't know it's there, and so we can't use it. And so similarly, we have the Buddha nature. We have the nature of the mind. We have the nature of Mahamudra, but we just don't know about it. And since we don't know about it, does it help us in any way? It doesn't. Just like gold, the essence of gold never changes. The nature of Mahamudra never changes. The nature of the mind never changes, whether you call it the Buddha nature or Mahamudra. It doesn't change in any way. It is always present. And so then this guy who's clairvoyant, he comes along and he sees this guy living in this shack. And underneath him there's this big hunk of gold. And he thinks, boy, this is terrible. This guy really doesn't need to suffer all this way. All he needs to do is just dig a little bit and pull it out, and then he's going to be fine. He's going to be golden. And so, he says to him, hey, you got to believe me on this one, but if you just, get a shovel and you dig a little bit under there, you're going to get this big piece of gold, this big, huge hunk of gold, and you're going to be set for the rest of your life. Hey, sounds pretty good. And so it's the same way. When we talk about, Mahamudra, or we talk about Buddha nature, this is something that's present within our mind. It's there. It's just that we haven't known that. From the beginningless times of samsara, we have not known it. But then there are the great masters who have come along. They've given us these wonderful instructions, and they say, hey, you have this nature of the mind. It's present within you. You just have to look at it and see it. It's like the gold. It's there. And so if we look and we see it, then we can free ourselves from all of our suffering. So from beginningless time until now, we have been wandering in samsara. We have been tormented by all sorts of different sufferings. But now Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche has given us these instructions on the nature of the mind, on the ordinary mind. He has pointed it out to us. And we just have to know what that nature is. And once we know what that nature is, we see that we have a really good path that we can follow. And so this is a really wonderful opportunity that we have, and so we absolutely have to practice and follow it. And so that is establishing the basis, the view, the basis. That is the basis, establishing the view. And so this is like developing real certainty in the path. It's like if we were planning to go someplace, we first get out a map and we plan how it is that we're going to go, what roads we need to go, and how we're going to get there. And so that is what it's like when we establish the view. And so then after we have this view and we found this view, then what is it that it teaches? Well, in teaching the view, it's taught that we have the view that comes from inference and the view that comes from direct perception. And the view that comes from direct perception is recognizing the nature of the mind, realizing the nature of the mind, and knowing it. But sometimes, because we are so habituated from beginningless samsara, sometimes what happens, it's like we're so habituated to confusion that sometimes we seem to realize it, and sometimes we don't seem to realize it. We sort of forget it. So this is what sort of happens. Sometimes it's like we have really strong belief and real certain it. Sometimes we just aren't sure about it at all. We aren't quite certain what is happening. So when we have this basis, the view, then we need to meditate upon the path. And so meditating on when we have this when we meditate on the path, then we have this certainty. We have the certainty in the clear nature of the mind. And so in order to teach this, it's the section on developing certainty because of the view, which starts in line 24. The goddess with an empty form, not anything at all, and the great bliss-clear radiance that appears as anything. The magical illusions that maybe are and maybe aren't. In just these themselves, there is something to be understood. And so when we say the goddess with an empty form, not anything at all. And so the nature of the mind, it's not... When we look at the nature of the mind, we can't establish it as being any sort of a thing. There's no shape to it, no color to it. When we look to see if it has a shape, what is the way that it might have a shape? What is the way that we don't have it, that it doesn't have a shape? And when we look at it in this way, we can't find anything at all. The nature of the mind is not anything at all. It is empty. This is the goddess with an empty form. This is the empty nature of Mahamudra and the nature of the mind. And so this is not anything at all. It's not anything at all, and yet the great bliss, clear radiance that appears as anything. At the same time as the mind is not anything at all, it also appears in many different ways. The clear aspect of the mind is unceasing. The clear radiance that appears as anything always happens. And so there is the nature of the mind. The nature of the mind is empty. But the essence of that emptiness is naturally clear radiance. And so if we look at it in detail, this is the nature of the mind, the great bliss. And so then there are the magical illusions that maybe are and maybe aren't. And so sometimes we have experiences that happen. And the experiences, sometimes there are experiences of happiness. Sometimes there are experiences of pain. There are different experiences that happen. And so these all happen within the nature of the mind, the magical illusions that maybe are and maybe aren't. And so in just these themselves, there is something to be understood. And so if we realize this and we look at it and we realize it, then we can have really certainty in it. We can really think, this is it. This is what I need to know. And so that is developing certainty. So first we establish the view, we realize the view through both inference and direct perception, and then here we talk about realizing it through direct expression. And then when we think about it really in a lot of detail, and we think about it thoroughly and really examine it carefully, then we develop the certainty in the view. And so once we have that real certainty in the view, what we need to do is we need to meditate upon it. And when we meditate upon it, then we develop experience. And so the development of the experiences that we feel in meditation are discussed starting in line 28, where it reads, "Though I look for various dancing girls, the unfindable, bright young empty form that is ravishing and suddenly present." So, though I look for springs out of my lap, and there are signs we have been making love, joined primordially, but without any ejaculation. So when it talks about the various dancing girls, there are all the appearances of Mahamudra. Sometimes Mahamudra is like the root of all the confused appearances of samsara. Sometimes it is the basis of the peace of nirvana. And so this is like the various dancing girls. And when we look for this Mahamudra, we look to say, where is Mahamudra? What is it like? Actually, is there any solid thing that is Mahamudra that we can find? There isn't. We cannot find it. The unfindable. So the essence of the form of it is emptiness, and yet that is also naturally clear and luminous at the same time. This is the union of the clarity and emptiness. This is what is discussed in the third Karmapa's aspiration for Mahamudra, in the line where it says, "Not something, even the Buddhas cannot find it. Not nothing, it's the basis for samsara and nirvana." And so it's not something, and yet it's not nothing either. And so this is the nature of Mahamudra. And so where is it? How is it? Well, this bright young empty form that is ravishing and suddenly present springs out of my lap. And so it's something that has been together with us. It's something that is always together. The nature of the mind is something that is present within the mind itself. It's not anything outside of the mind anywhere. It is just the way the essence of the mind actually is. And so it is just right there. And so no matter what we are doing, it is right there. So it's like it's sprung out of my lap. It's together with us. It's always been together with us. And so this is resting in the equipoise of meditation and meditating upon it. We meditate upon this and we keep trying to nurture the experience of meditation over and over again. And so when we nurture the experience of equipoise, there are two ways that we do this. We have the actual main practice, and then there is also the post-meditation. So the equipoise and the post-meditation. And the equipoise, or the main meditation practice, is when we are looking at the nature of the mind, and we see that the nature of the mind is empty, and yet at the same time it is naturally clear, and we meditate upon this during our formal meditation. And then sometimes we get up, and when we get up, we try to maintain that experience, maintain the feeling. Remember the feeling of the equipoise in our post-meditation. So whether we are eating, or whether we're going, whether we're working, whether we're talking, we just remember this experience of the nature of the mind. We keep it in mind, and we remember in it. And so this is because this is all just like the hue or the experience of the nature of the mind. And so in this way, when we practice meditation, we're doing the formal meditation, then we recognize and we maintain that recognition, and then we also try to remember it in the post-meditation. And in this way, by enhancing and helping our main practice, we're able to improve our post-meditation. By working with and enhancing the post-meditation, we're able to improve our actual meditation practice. And so in this way, our meditation and the post-meditation work together. And it's like we're never closing the door on our practice. And this is something that we don't have to make any efforts to do. It's just something, it's naturally there. It's present, it's naturally there, naturally indivisible and indivisibly present with us. And so first we establish the view. Of, and we have developed certainty through direct perception, and then we develop, and then there's the experience that comes from it. But we haven't, up to now, we haven't experienced it, we haven't realized it. So what is the reason why we haven't experienced it? Well, it is as it says here, it's as if the moon face of the co-emergent is in the partless universal sea in some manner that can't be grasped. And so there is the co-emergent, the innate nature of Mahamudra that is present within ourselves. And this is like the moon face. It's like the moon, and it's shining within the emptiness or the essence of the mind. And it's present there. It's like it's really there. And is it there? Is it something that's always been there? It has always been there. It's not like we've newly discovered something brand new. It's just always, from the very beginning, it has been there. But up to now, it has not, we have not experienced it. Up to now, we have not meditated on Mahamudra, we have not meditated upon the nature of the mind, and that is why we have not realized the nature of the mind. It's not like realizing the nature of the mind is something that is just too difficult to realize. It's not as if there's nothing to realize. It's not as if there is no possible way that we can meditate it. That's not why it hasn't happened. The only reason it hasn't happened is that lunatics such as me have not begun to examine. So we're just crazy. We haven't, for whatever reason, we haven't started to look at it. And so the only reason we haven't looked at it is that we have not examined it yet. And so then, what can cause us to actually develop the realization? Well, it is as continues in verse 35. Telo and Naro's last testament, the single transmission, gives a secret sign of the essence of the meaning lineage. And so here the source of the instructions of Mahamudra is Telopa. And Telopa then gave the instructions to Naropa. And then from Naropa down, they were passed in what is called the single transmission. And so this is mentioned later on in the song as in the 13 members of the single transmission. And so what this means, the single transmission means that, excuse me, at first, when they gave the instructions were given from one Lama to one main disciple. The Lama would speak them orally, and the student would listen to them, and then they would pass them down to one disciple. And this happened for 13 generations. So over the course of 13 generations, there was a single transmission. So from Telopa down to Naropa, to Marpa, to Milarepa, and so forth. That is how these instructions were passed on for 13 generations until getting to the fifth Karmapa, Deshin Shekpa. And then Deshin Shekpa taught them to a student named Kunga Rinchen. And then from Kunga Namgyal, excuse me. So it's Kunga Namgyal. So then from then on, they were gradually passed down in the lineage. And so this is these gave a secret sign of the essence of the meaning lineage. And so there are two ways you could have translated this line. And one is to say the secret sign, and one is to say send off a carrier pigeon of the secret lineage. And so here Rinpoche explained it more like sending off the carrier pigeon of the secret lineage. This means that he's sending off a message, giving a message, and so that it is because that message has been sent off that he's been able to find and to attain this view. So I've cast away the rigors of looking from afar and have the hope to lay me down carefree and relaxed. And so when we think about the ultimate city, the final ultimate result of the path, is this something that is far away, difficult to get to, an arduous, difficult journey to get to? It's not. Actually, it's just recognizing the nature of the mind. And this is something that is there, that is easy. It's not hard to find. And so when we cast away the rigors of looking from afar, then we can have the hope to lay ourselves down, carefree and relaxed. So just taking it easy, having a happy time, resting within meditation. And so here, this is something, it's an example that is given in a way that makes it easy for us ordinary people who live in the world to be able to understand. But it's also something that we can practice, something with the nature of how things are. And if we practice that, we are able to receive to attain the result from it. These are wonderful instructions that we give. And when we think about it, often we think that when Chögyam Trungpa Rinpoche fled Tibet, we look at it and we think, he fled the Chinese, he had to go to get away from the Chinese. But actually, if we think about it, really, what he's doing, he left intentionally. He came for the purpose of leaving and bringing these instructions out and then bringing them and establishing them here in America. And so then he came and he gave these instructions. And these are instructions that are easy to understand. They're wonderful. They're lovely instructions, and they're presented in a way using examples that are easy for householders to lay people to understand. And so because of that, if you just read this over and over again, you think about it, and you can meditate upon them, really put them into practice, then you are extraordinarily fortunate. And so now you have this extraordinary fortune. This is something that you have to use, and you have to make it possible for yourselves to practice. So that is enough for this morning's session. Now please recite the dedication and aspiration prayers.